So you may hopefully be familiar with the program Grow My SME. This is an offer to the Humber area, funded by European Regional Development Fund, which is a series of support, training, networking for SMEs, with the view of the vision of growth. So I do encourage you to go and have a look at the website, Grow My SME UK, or chat to Lynn, who's on the line here, if you want to get involved in some more of these webinars. I will be involved in another 3, I think, 2 or 3, cloud computing and Internet of Things and sort of disruptive technologies. So if you enjoy today, I encourage you to come back and join me for some more webinars at a later time. Let's carry on with the slides. So today we're going to talk about the digitally enabled home office, and I'm really coming from 2 perspectives here. From the perspective of employers and what you can do for your employees, but also from the perspective of the employee. I think two are equally valid. So my name's Fraser. I live in North Lincolnshire, so I've lived here for many, many years, despite the accent, and I have been working from home, working remotely also for probably a decade. So I think I've got a reasonable authority on this. We've got a good hour and a half, and there'll be plenty of breaks for us to talk together, as well as me just to you. We've got time for questions and discussions at the end, and I won't be monitoring the chat, but I do encourage you to use it. I know Lynn on the call will be monitoring that. So there'll be these various interludes, and I will try and then answer your questions. And I encourage you, of course, to talk to me as well. This can be nice and interactive. In the meanwhile, please do try and keep your microphones muted, and that just avoids any unwanted noise for everyone else. If there is a problem, hopefully there isn't, and I'm thinking more about my own technology here, I will try to dial back in. So just give me a few more minutes. Lynn will probably, crack some jokes and keep you entertained. And that just means that we don't have to completely waste this session. So that's a bit of housekeeping for you before we begin. So a bit more about me. That's what I look like ordinarily. Hopefully I haven't changed too much. As I said, I am based in North Lincolnshire. I am based in the region. My expertise is digital, really, and that's digital products and services. And I've worked for a whole bunch of folks, mostly government, believe it or not. And that typically would involve me, serving government agencies up and down the country from my base here. But I've also worked for an Australian software company, again, working out of the UK, but working for Australians. And that's real distance working, and totally possible. Thankfully, because I'm in the digital trade, I suppose as an employee, I'm well suited to do that. But I was thinking a little earlier before I started this this presentation, I was thinking, could I say to you guys, look, if you're a firefighter, you absolutely can't work from home. My temptation was to say, yes, you must be out tackling fires. But then I thought, well, look, in this age of drones, then theoretically you could be sat behind your computer, flying a drone, putting the fire out. Maybe not quite as exciting or the reality we currently live in, but potentially, a lot more home working can be enabled through the use of technology. So my first question, I suppose, is, how far will the shift go? And we all know that this shift has occurred as a result of the pandemic, but as it happens, there was a creep of remote work, homework before all this started. My best example to you is a firm called Automattic. You may not have heard of them. They are actually quite a big firm in America who underpin a lot of the websites, the big websites on the internet today. They have 900 staff and no office. That's how they've always been. And they can do that because they are a distributed workforce who work on technology things. I have a friend who works for Automattic. The cool thing is, he can work from wherever he wants around the world. They give him a laptop and they give him an expenses account, so he can actually pay for his coffees at various places around the country, and he meets up with other automatic staff. So they also have these social meets. So it's totally possible to have no office and work for a company. And there are websites out there, digital nomad nations, which help you find a job that is a sort of being a digital nomad that can be conducted from anywhere. And indeed, Estonia here have provided nomads, these digital nomads, with a special visa. The possibilities are endless. Now, what's quite neat, something that caught my eye is on this slide. I noticed that a local pub sort of latched onto this idea and said, look, you can use our premises if you want. There's a Wi-Fi, we've got a plug, come and have a desk, and we'll feed you and give you some tea for £10. So just think, if you've got a business like this, how you might adapt yourself to this new type of audience. So what are the challenges of working from home or remote working? Well, they are numerous, regrettably. Businesses are struggling with how to recruit remotely, how to reintroduce their staff to the workplace when the pandemic ceases. And we're going to look at some of these challenges this morning, but also look at how the digital technology can effectively reduce or play into some of these. So obviously it's not without problems. Now, you've probably sold the picture on the left-hand side here of the perfect working environment. The chap who's sat in a very clean office, ready for work, and everything's great. And the reality is probably more like the picture on the right here. That's certainly my reality, where you've got things going on, interruptions. And of course, during the pandemic, we've got this compounded effect whereby our families are potentially around us as well. So it's not an ideal world. The thing I like about the picture on the right here with the young mother who's slumped is this is not a very productive workplace. Not only is the noise happening, but look at the posture, look at the laptop on the knee. And my message to you is really that a well-equipped home worker in a good, healthy environment is a productive worker. So really, for me, the secret to home working is to remain productive. I scraped up some other photos of working at home. A little bit of feedback there. Just because I thought it was a fascinating idea. And, this is what people's home office looks like. You can see my home office. You can only see part of it, but there's a lot of junk behind this green screen. And actually, there's a lot of paperwork. And the more COVID we've had, kind of the messier it gets here. But I imagine everyone will be sat in a slightly different home environment right now. What else I noticed, someone's annotated their home office here. There are some benefits. So look at this beanbag this person's got. They can have a rest after they've done some work. This is something you will not typically find in a traditional office environment. The ability to go and have a nap or stroke a dog for that well-being. So there are some plus sides to the home office too. It's very much your own. And if I look at some of the webinars I've been on and other people have been on, you can also see people are kind of working in different places. So we've got the chap in the bottom left here who's outside, wouldn't we love to do that? I've tried it, incredible glare on my screen, can't see what's being written, but there's folks working on the couch, from the couch, the kitchen, shared spaces. I used to work with someone quite recently who used to get in their car to have webinars like this, and that's because they felt it was kind of like a quiet place. But goodness, we're all doing this differently, aren't we? So the problems then, and you'll be familiar with these, space, storage, bandwidth interruptions, but also comms, not just about the environment, but your technology. If you've got great internet connection, perfect, we can communicate, but there still might be a hiccup. We can't fall back on our IT departments to save us, to protect us from viruses. We kind of managing our own technology as well as using it. And there are some things about comfort levels, safety, security, which in total add up to this poor productivity problem. And this is why we're going to look at some of the solutions today. So digital solutions to improve working environments, connectivity, comfort levels. What is there? Looking at the bigger picture, it's all about well-being, and we've got your social well-being, your psychological well-being, your physical, your environment. I hope to address all of these this morning. So we're going to start off particularly looking at environment and where digital solutions can play into a better working environment for the purposes of productivity. But before we do, there is a small interlude. I promised you these small interludes. We've only done 10 minutes or so. Lynn, is there anything in the chat that I should pick up, or anyone want to say something?
No, all good from my side.
Okay, well, look, that's good. You're making it easy for me. I dare say as we go through a bit further, it'd be interesting to hear your own scenarios and understand exactly how you've coped with either remote working or remote working of your employees. So I will simply crack on. Sounds like that's going to be a happy Friday for everybody. So the first thing I want to show you is about sets of equipment, and really equipment that I've used and I would recommend to you, and I will explain to you why, and you can then of course dash off and buy these things. But the first thing is lighting. And I am actually in a converted garage. It's quite a big room. And I found that as the winter was coming on, it was getting quite dark and I was straining. Now monitors, you can adjust your brightness. That's great. You don't want to get eye strain. In an office environment, it's typically quite bright. Some office environments are smart in that what they'll do is they'll sort of gradually ramp up the brightness as the day goes on, and they want you to be productive. But then as you come towards lunchtime, the lighting will dim slightly, and that's purposely so that you take your break and you realize it's lunchtime, and then again it will brighten up again, and at the end of the day it will dim again. So lighting is very important, and ambient lighting is quite important too. There are two bits of equipment here on this slide which I really think are great. The first one is a plug-in LED bulb, but it's got these sort of wings on it that fold in and out. This is super bright. And the beauty of those wings is that you can kind of light up all of the corners of the room if you're working in a corner, so that there's a kind of consistent amount of light in your room. I bought one of these recently. They're very cheap, about £15, but goodness, it's made a real difference in terms of my eye strain. The second piece of equipment I totally recommend is Philips Hue lighting. And you can see the picture here on the right. These are smart lights. So you connect this box to your internet router, and it means you can control your lights remotely, but you can also have them on timers. You can change the color. You can actually turn the lights on and off from your phone, which is incredibly useful. And it just means that you've got absolute control over the lighting in your home. It also means you can save energy. So if you combine this with a motion sensor, if you're not in the room, then the lights will go off. And that means that working from home doesn't have to be expensive, because you can be sure that there's no unnecessary light in your house. So two great pieces of kit that I totally recommend. Philips Hue lighting, a little bit more expensive, regrettably, but very versatile. Thinking again about the environment, the kind of ambient temperature of the environment is important. I tend to set my thermostats quite generously to sort of 20 degrees. I totally recommend a internet connected thermostat. I put Nest here. If you're not familiar with that, basically it's again a thermostat which you can turn up and down and have programs on through either the thermostat itself or your phone. So if you're sat in your office and you feel like you're getting a bit chilly, you don't have to get up and go to the thermostat. You can pick up your phone and turn the temperature up. Equally, if you're out of your home, you can reduce the temperature in it when you're out and about if you forget to turn the heating down and save money. So another great of internet connected kit. If you are particularly concerned about your air quality, you could buy a purifier, and there are many brands of purifier out there. Something I don't have because I fear it might be slightly noisy, but it has been said that your printer, for example, can give out some nasties, ozone, all kinds of things. And if you're sensitive to dust and that kind of thing, a purifier might be a great bit of kit for you. Now, speaking of noise, I suppose first prize is not to have noisy neighbours or dogs barking or whatever. But I find I live in quite a quiet area, and that's the beauty of Humberside, I suppose. But the noisiest thing in my office is definitely my computer, and I'd say that inside the computer, the noise thing is the fan. So if you want to change your power supply unit, you can buy these ultra quiet ones, and that would save you some noise. But also your hard drive, most people's hard drives sort of bubble along and they drive you crazy. You can buy these solid state SSD hard drives. I've got a picture on the bottom there, very useful. If you wear headphones, of course, that will shield you from some of the ambient noise. And if they are active noise reducing headphones, then again, you'll get rid of some of the hiss that you might have in your office. So again, great pieces of kit to have. You would need to know a bit about sort of swapping and changing PC things if you were to adopt these. And then, of course, there's your working environment, your security. Hopefully you won't have any problems with that. But I find these three devices are very useful. A smoke alarm, and I've gone with my choice here, which is Nest, again from Google. This doubles as a CO2 alarm. So not only can you be assured that you're protected against fire outbreaks in your working environment, but also carbon monoxide. The other thing here is a Ring Video doorbell, and that is basically a doorbell which takes video, and you can answer the door from your phone, so you don't have to get up for the delivery person. Again, you can just speak to them through your phone and say, leave the parcel on the doorstep or whatever. And the third item here is an Alexa device, which is one of these voice assistants. You can actually see who's at your door using that particular Alexa show, so it works nicely with the doorbell. And I must also say that smoke alarm, carbon monoxide alarm works in tandem with your thermostat. So if there's a fire, it turns your boiler off. So all of these things can work together and just give you a kind of automated home environment, which really saves you from servicing your home. I'm expecting the postman, so if I do escape, then you'll excuse me for not having a Ring Video doorbell, but I'd love one. Finally, on this working environment section, I think it's important to keep your data secure. One of the best bits of kit I've invested in for many years is this thing in the middle of the slide here, which is a piece of network attached storage from Synology. And basically, it's like inside there are a number of hard drives. So I can go and save my work to this thing. And the beauty of it is that it's always on because it's got many hard drives. If one of those hard drives fail, my data is not lost because they're sort of interswappable. It's safe. And I can access my files remotely as I could with cloud storage. And it will also run a web page, so I can have it as a web server if I've got a website. So it's just a little device that sits in my loft, believe it or not, so no one can steal my data, and it acts as my own sort of data backup. I could put my data onto the cloud and have OneDrive or somewhere else, but if I lose my internet connectivity, then I can't even get that back. So it's kind of like my own my backup of a backup, if you like. You can go one step further. I've also got this the small USB backup drive. I've put the version there, which is a solid state thing, and I just make again backups of the backup using that. The other thing on this page is slightly more curious, and it's an uninterruptible power supply. So basically, if the power goes off here, then I've got like 10 minutes from this battery backup to save my work and close down my computer gracefully. And it just means that I'm never in a situation where the power's gone off and my productivity is destroyed. So that's quite a cheap piece of kit, and I guess it's a reflection of the fact if you are working remotely then we get these strange things happen at home that you might not get in a inner city environment. You know, power cut's quite rare, I would say, but rurally, Lincolnshire, you know, a pigeon just has to land on the line and the power goes off here. So a great piece of kit, good piece of investment. All right, well, look, there's another 10 minutes gone. Goodness, this is going to go very quickly. Has anyone written anything in the chat, Lynn? Has anyone got this equipment?
Nothing in the chat.
Oh dear. Well, I do hope you're all still listening intently. That's my shopping list, I suppose. So it should be on your Christmas wish list for productive working environment. Feel free to send in those questions. Anyone want to say anything at this point? Anyone want to unmute and don't be shy.
Catherine says she's definitely listening with all ears.
Okay, great. Well, I'm pleased. That's exactly how I like it. You know, if you want to ask me anything, I'm keen to keep it interactive. Let's carry on. More equipment, and I will talk about sort of software and some tips later, but keeping on the equipment theme, there are some kind of essentials I think everyone should have at home. And these may seem like really boring items, you know, a keyboard, a mouse, but if you've got a bad mouse or a bad keyboard, I think it really does affect the way you work. So I'm really big fans of Logitech mice and Microsoft keyboards, and it sounds like a sort of brand snobbery, doesn't it? But these devices they just make your life so much easier. You know, you don't get a sticking mouse ball. That Logitech mouse is beautifully ergonomically designed. You've got the scroll wheel if you want to zoom down web pages. From the keyboard's perspective, you know, it's a nice soft touch, nice feedback on that keyboard. It won't annoy everyone else around you because it's not too noisy. It just works beautifully. And if you've got a laptop, I would say then, you know, totally have a dock, because if you have a dock, then you'll find that your laptop is charging as you use it, but also you'll be able to connect your peripherals to it. So you'll benefit from a full-size keyboard, you know, a proper mouse. You probably find that you're going to need some extra USB ports. I put this picture on the bottom right there of a product which has extends your number of USB ports, but it also gives you these extra 3 in that little square, and they are great for charging. So you know, think about how you charge your phone, but all of these little bits and pieces really, in my view, do add up to a bigger whole in terms of being productive. So just some essentials there for you. Another essential is a monitor. I think probably fair to say that we've all got one, if not a laptop. And you know, all monitors are not the same. I think the important thing for your monitor is not only for it to be at the right height and the distance away from you and brightness and so on, but that it reduces your eye strain. I've spoken about lighting. Apparently it's the ultra blue light that gives you the strain, and you can get these monitors which totally reduce that. And they claim to be totally flicker free, but they're also low glare. So ASUS, you can see here, have a monitor. I think BenQ have an iSense eye care monitor. And if you spend a lot of time in front of your computer, you know, if you've got any of these symptoms like red eyes, burning eyes, headache, just think about that. Just think about whether it's your monitor at fault. I would say the size of the monitor is also could be a factor. I'm not totally keen of the oversized monitors because I think there's something about your periphery vision, and it almost, to me, sort of affects the ambience, the lighting ambience. But do look out for these low blue light, low flicker monitors. On the comm side, you'll probably recognize the headset that I've got on today. Personally, I'm a fan of headsets. People do use their loudspeakers, but I just find I'm guaranteed, you know, the connection with my headset. This particular one from Jabra, the reason I like it is it's stereo for a start. It's got this, you know, adjustable, movable mouthpiece, and I don't know if you can see it's got like a control module here. Where I can turn up the volume, mute the call, you know, adjust everything that's going on. It's even got this really cool little light, And that, if I press that, illuminates on my earpiece. So if I've got a member of the family who spot me working in my office, I can put the light on just to let them know that I'm busy and not to interrupt me. So a really neat piece of kit. The other great thing about this is that it works via USB. So it's almost like straight digital audio, and I can remove the USB and just have the microphone connector. So it works with any computer, basically. Really fab. On the video front, I've said I'm a fan of Logitech. I promise I'm not getting shares from them, not getting paid by them. They have got some fantastic webcams. It's the one I'm using today, and it's got a beautiful little hooking system to go over the top of your monitor bezel, but it's also got that privacy shield, that plastic flap. And I think it's okay to be paranoid about, having a webcam in your face all the time. I know that if I put that privacy shield down, no one's looking at me. I can be totally guaranteed of that. If you've got the weird thing in the bottom right of this slide is a femtocell. Slightly more unusual these days, but a femtocell is basically a piece of equipment which will boost your mobile phone signal. And if you're suffering with poor indoor mobile phone signal, do ask your network provider, who might be able to give you one of these femtocells. So things there to help you communicate, really, really important. There are also software services. So, hopefully you've all heard of these: Microsoft Teams, G Suite, Office 365. These are collaboration tools for working with other people on documents, in the cloud, email, all kinds of features to these collaboration suites. We're using Zoom today. Well, not actually, we're using something slightly like Zoom, aren't we? But all of these things I think can help you stay in contact. Another service I want to draw your attention to is called Number People. So you can actually rent a number, a new sort of landline number. And the beauty of this is, if you're working from home, you can have a separate number if you haven't got a mobile in particular for your work calls. Number People are great because you can also deploy some routing for those calls. So you could have it that, during your lunch break, all your calls go to voicemail, or you could call route through Number People. So, press number 1 to go through to Fraser, press number 2 to go through to Fraser's wife. Goodness knows why you'd need that, but you can see that some of these software offerings can really help you in the way you organize your homework. You're going to probably need printing as well. I think it's a given these days. Most people are going to have a printer at home, I'm sure. These are two pieces of equipment I find invaluable. The reason I like this printer is I can connect it via my network, but I can also connect it via Wi-Fi, and it's low cost, and it doesn't take up a lot of desk space, and it's actually pretty cheap to buy. I also find that I need a scanner, a document scanner. So if someone sends me something and I need to sign it and I can't do that electronically, then I need to scan documents in, or paperwork is inevitable, I think. So I'm not a big fan of all-in-ones, where all of these pieces of equipment are joined up, just because I think if one thing breaks, then everything's broken. So I have separate devices, but I encourage you, of course, to think about your printing needs and your scanning needs, and indeed whether you could scan and sign things electronically, or whether you need that capability. A really important one, this connectivity. It's kind of like the golden thread of your home office, and without good connectivity, you're stuck. So what's my advice on connectivity? Well, I think having a decent, certainly fiber connection definitely helps. And I'm not going to talk too much about choosing an ISP or the right broadband, but I think the thing that people get wrong is having a poor router. So this is the thing that takes your internet and distributes it and gives you Wi-Fi. Now, my product of choice is the ASUS RTAC88U, and it's pictured here. But the reason why I like this router, you can see it's got a lot of aerials. It covers great Wi-Fi, and it looks like a stealth fighter, which obviously appeals to me. but it's got a number of key features. The first one, it's dual band. So that means it operates wirelessly on the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz spectrum. And why that's useful is that most wireless devices operate at this 2 gigahertz, but it can be a very crowded space. And the 5 gigahertz spectrum is less crowded. So you might get faster throughput. But also this means that I can turn on and off those wireless bands and have different devices on different bands. So for today, because I know I need sort of maximum bandwidth with you, I've turned off the 2 gigahertz band, which has most of my wireless junk on, whereas the 5 gigahertz is still going. So my family can still work. So that's kind of a neat feature. The other great thing I like about on this router is it has QoS. So that's quality of service. It means that I can prioritize certain types of data. So my kids love watching YouTube. When they stick on YouTube, it swamps my internet connection. So I have prioritized this type of, my office work over that. The router's also got parental controls and all kinds of other things. So think about that. If you are lucky enough to get good cellular signal in your area, I would recommend you invest in a MiFi dongle, and I've got a picture of one here. This is the sort of small box on your screen. Now you can connect that to your router. So if your broadband goes down, it just switches over to your MiFi dongle, and you've got this seamless internet again. If you're like me, you'll probably find that you need some internet connectivity around your house. And I think Wi-Fi is great, but sometimes it just will not reach unless you invest in some very expensive sort of Wi-Fi repeaters. So I'm big fans of these power line adapters. Seen in the bottom right-hand side here, in particular the TP-Link ones. I think they're the best ones. They will literally take your internet and route it on top of your electricity cables. So you can have a sender and a receiver, and it works fabulously. I'm also going to recommend to you that if you do invest in this technology, you look at the devices which have a through port. So you can see here that you don't lose a plug socket. You've still got that opportunity to plug something in. Very, very useful and pretty fast, up to about 1300 megabits per second. So, great cheap kit to have. Let me just see if I can still move my slides. Fantastic. The other question I get asked quite a lot.
Sorry,
Hello. Yeah.
Got a couple of questions for you. A few questions.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. There is an interlude coming up, but I'm happy to answer them now. Yeah, go for it.
So Catherine has asked, what are the advantages of using a webcam rather than a built-in one?
Great question. So if you've got a laptop, you're right, you might typically have a built-in webcam. The trouble with those webcams is that they can be sort of mediocre resolution, and that may be fine for your, for your purposes. But the other, because they're lesser quality, the other problem is with low lighting, they can start to give a very poor reproduction. Some of those built-in webcams also have what we call slow frame rate. So, if I swish my hand around, it's quite smooth, but they might be sort of jerky. So they typically are not quite as good from a specification point of view. And of course, if you've got a webcam that's in the lid of your laptop, then adjusting the angle isn't great. I can give you a tour. Of kind of like my window and so forth, and I can do that just by grabbing the webcam. So those are the key advantages of a separate webcam. What's the other?
And then, sorry, one more question. So Kevin's asked, for non-technos like Kevin, what is the difference between dual band 2 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz?
So yes, sorry, I do tend to talk in acronyms, so you have to be careful. And so there are different frequencies on which your Wi-Fi will work, and this is where I refer to gigahertz. The standard Wi-Fi is, carried in the air at this frequency, 2.4 gigahertz, and obviously 5 gigahertz is a higher frequency. So being a higher frequency, it operates in its own in its own sort of channel. And because most people are used to just operating in this 2.4 gigahertz channel, it means that your Wi-Fi, the space that your Wi-Fi is going through the air, might be very similar to your neighbours, and it's quite a crowded place. And it means that sometimes the speed of your Wi-Fi is not as good as it could be. The 5 gigahertz space, fewer people are in, and if your equipment will support, it's an alternative basically. Some equipment supports both of those channels at once, just to complicate things. So for ultra speeds, you can have your Wi-Fi broadcasting on both at the same time. And if you've got equipment that can receive both of those frequencies at the same time, you sort of double your speed. I'm sorry, there's no simple way of explaining some of that. Any other questions? I mean, this slide might help you a little. So the question I get asked quite a bit is, how do I improve my Wi-Fi signal? And one of the things you can do if you're confident is to go inside your router and have a look at the sort of setup screens and make sure that you've got the latest firmware, you've got the latest versions of the software that the router works, but also that sometimes you can adjust the power, believe it or not, of your router. You can, increase it. I would encourage you to look at your antennas on your router to make sure that if you've got an antenna, it's sort of straight and upright. And if you haven't got an antenna, consider connecting an external antenna, because that will boost your signal. But also, if you buy if you download a free app called Wi-Fi Analyzer by olgor.com, and I'm not endorsing that necessarily, you can actually just scan the airwaves, and you'll see a graph a bit like the one you see on the screen here, and it will show you the names of the networks and where they sit in that Wi-Fi space. And you could probably then see your neighbor's Wi-Fi and everything, and you can adjust your own to be in the space that's least occupied.
So that's how you what gigahertz you're on, because Sam has asked how can you check what gigahertz you're on.
It will, yes, it will. So that's probably the answer to the question. Download the app and have a look. I mean, I imagine you're working on 2.4. It is this, it's like the very standard. But to confuse things even further, within the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, you have these channels. You've got like 14 channels. So your router will typically find the channel which is clearest and automatically hop to it. But you can also force it to stay on in a particular channel, and this is where this app comes in useful. So you can force it to stay in one of these channels, and indeed you can see the interference that's going on around you, and whether this is a problem or not. So I'm sorry we did get a bit techie there, but you can't break anything. Go and have a play, and do think about getting equipment which is 5 gigahertz ready, because it will give you this, in theory, extra space. Invest in a good router, I suppose, is what I'm telling you. That's my tip. Think about spending some decent money on a good router. Junk the one that came with your broadband supplier if necessary, and you'll be on a winner. So there was the interlude. I think you've probably superseded this with some of your questions, which is absolutely fine. But anything else that's jumped to people's minds? Can't see anything. All right, that's fine. Look, just keep them coming in as we go along, and I will try to answer them as best I can in the most plain English that I've got, which is occasionally good. So we've looked at well-being, we've looked at environment in terms of well-being, but how about physical, psychological, social well-being? Well, this is definitely a kind of a kind of interest area for a lot of people. You know, there's a lot of searches now about breathing apps, well-being, and the technology can definitely help. In the UAE, they've actually appointed a well-being minister. You know, maybe this is something we'll get in this country, but people are taking this seriously. And again, it's all about productivity. You know, good well-being, good physical, social, psychological well-being is going to mean great productivity. So I would encourage anyone who was working in a team, certainly, to think about how they can use the technology for developing a digital support network. So, you know, we've got webinars like this today, which are great. You know, we're doing some education pieces, but how about those informal moments where you just want to chat with your colleagues, the coffee breaks? These are the things we miss from the workplace. And I think it's great if you are able to strike up these moments using Zoom or some kind of technology where people can just drop in, and they can drop in for a chat, and you don't talk about work, but you know, you talk about the shapes in the clouds or whatever. And I do think that technology can support loneliness and the sort of isolation from working from home, but equally, I think employers have to make those moments. The other thing that's quite magical, I think, is our ability to reward people. And I'm a big fan of using Amazon e-gift vouchers just to send to people out of the blue. You know, in comes an email. Oh no, not another work email. Oh great, it's a £5 gift card from Amazon. You know, there are things that we can do to harness the tech to really boost people, and I think it's really important we look after people's mental health during this time. So consider how you use use technology to create these support networks. The other important thing is health, isn't it? And you know, a physio that I know once said to me, or I was questioning my friend who's a physio, and I said, you know, what's the one thing that I can do to improve my health? You know, sitting is the new smoking. You may have heard this. I totally believe it. And he said to me, you know, the best thing you can do is just move. Just occasionally move. And it was so simple. And nothing to do with technology. You know, just get up and do some stretches, go for a walk, but just don't keep sitting all day. Now, the reason I brought this up on this slide is that you can buy some software called Keybreak. It's only £6, and it will monitor the number of keystrokes you make, and it will monitor how long you're spending in front of your computer, and it will pop up with these exercises at the right time. It'll just say, you know, 60 seconds, twist, sit up, I don't know, move your ears if you can do that. And it really just helps you break up your day and also try and retain some health. Now, this is a great piece of software you can imagine could be deployed to every employee, and it really isn't expensive. If you wanted to go the full hog, you could actually get a remote workstation assessment, and there are some rules, some DSE rules about these workstation assessments that employers must adhere to. For about £150 through CommuteMeNot.com, you can get a one-to-one with a physio, and they will literally talk about any aches and pains you've got. They will look at your posture. They will then recommend some equipment for you. So this is using digital to get those assessments, remote assessments. I will, of course, you know, totally recommend to you a nice, comfortable, ergonomic chair. I think, although it's not a digital piece of equipment, it's something that's often overlooked. And if you think about those pictures of offices that I showed you at the beginning of the day, you know, how many people are sat on those uncomfortable square wooden chairs or sofas that are too soggy? You know, I think that's all important. So alongside all of that is your sort of tracker technology, and I don't know about you, I've had a Fitbit, all kinds of things, all kinds of trackers. These are great. I think they help you monitor your own self health. I don't think I've seen quite them go as far as monitoring on employees' well-being data. Maybe we'll get to that point. An interesting idea, you know, what's the health of your workforce? Do we know, because we've got technology which will monitor that remotely? Anyway, you know, do try out some of these things about mood trackers and activity trackers. I think they are great if you've got a particular concern or issue, or of course do encourage your employees to download them, or give them, you know, health trackers if necessary. There's a third angle as well, and that is kind of like, you know, personal development. E-learning, what a great time for e-learning. You know, we've all got the opportunity to dip in maybe to webinars like this, but also training courses which can be delivered remotely, which you could consume during the night, you know, during your free time. And weirdly, there is this kind of like growing space which is esports. So this is the competitive nature of gaming, I suppose. And if you combine that idea about sort of gaming in a traditional sense, where you're sat behind a computer and you're kind of just sat down. Well, if you've got a VR headset and you've got an Oculus Rift or something like that, you can actually interact with the game and be a bit physical. A bit like those Nintendo things that everyone used to have, the Wii Fits. Who remembers Wii Fit, where you could sort of jump up and down and get healthy whilst using your technology? So there's another interlude for you. I think there's been some more questions come in on the chat. I hope there has. Lynn, are you still with us, or am I going to have to open up my chat window?
No, I'm still here, Fraser. Yeah, I was just replying back to Catherine. She was asked whether you're going to cover cybersecurity today. So I was just about to say no, but we've done a previous webinar on cybersecurity. And then Brian has said that you can monitor well-being both as an individual and for work groups with heart rate variability monitoring. And that's something that's offered as a service by Brian, actually. So if anybody wants that, then let me know and I can share his details with you.
Brilliant. Well, this is great. I'm learning today as well. I mean, in terms of that first question, cybersecurity, you're right. I wasn't going to cover it in great detail, other than to say a couple of things, I suppose. You know, I think it's worth having a decent antivirus application loaded on your computer. For what it's worth, I use Kaspersky, and I know that people have been horrified that that's Russian, but I just find it works really well and it's cheap. If you buy a decent internet router, you will find that it has a firewall in it and various things about that will protect you. If you're really, you know, paranoid about your USB drives and backups, you can encrypt them. These are kind of like, I suppose, fundamentals for me. I suppose it depends on what data you have and if it's personal data. And you know, I'm not going to go into it. I said I wouldn't, but it sounds like that cybersecurity module is worth visiting. On the well-being monitoring, I'm fascinated by heart rate variability monitoring remotely. You know, maybe that does, Brian, indicate, you know, stress in people. That could be fascinating, couldn't it? Is my workforce getting stressed at the moment? Maybe that's time to issue your Amazon voucher.
And then Catherine's also asked, do you know how your mood and anxiety can be tracked?
So the way I've seen psychologists, you know, measure mood and things is by questionnaire. Quite simply, there are some standardized questionnaires about, you know, how do you feel today and that kind of stuff. So you could actually get people to go off and fill those things out on a regular basis, I suppose. It's a tricky one, isn't it? How do you measure someone's mood? I quite like the idea of seeing people's faces on webinars, and I'm sorry because a lot of you have you know, not sent your cam through today, but you know, those visual clues we can lose easily when we're working remotely. I can see Lynn is smiling because she knows she's off on holiday soon. That makes me feel great. But you know, sometimes you can just see when someone is not themselves, and I would encourage you, if you're going to have a team meeting, that you tell people they do need to have their webcams on. So that's another idea for you. Okay. Any other cues that?
No questions. Brian's just also commented on the mood and anxiety, that it can be tracked with biofeedback and it's very effective. So I don't know whether, Brian, you wanted to unmute and you wanted to tell us a bit about that, so everyone else can hear as well.
Good morning to you all.
Hi, Brian.
Morning.
A terrible monitor, apologies. Yes, I'm a psychotherapist. I work with what I call biofeedback techniques, and really what they do is they monitor subconscious aspects of the body. So an easy way to look at that is you can measure a thing called your autonomic nervous system, which is the fight-flight system, and it gives you direct feedback in real time on what your state is for both anxiety and mood, and using a load of different techniques which are not pharmacological. It's possible to learn to adapt your situation. So if you're getting tense or anxious, if you look at your body position at a screen, you can tend to get hunched up. All those sort of things can affect your autonomic nervous system. And biofeedback techniques can be very effective to help monitor and manage that.
Brilliant. I feel lucky we've got an expert on the call. If only I'd have known some of the stuff before putting the slides together. I think this is a fascinating area of tech. The tech health. I think it's a growth sector. So I must drop in on some of these other webinars. I think that's my to do. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on, because I don't want to lose track of the time here. We've only got very limited time. I'm going to dive straight into the next section for you, and this is really about software that will help your productivity. And I wasn't a believer. I thought, how can software really help me become productive? And it totally can. And I think the solution to look at is something called Zapier. So with Zapier, you kind of set up rules, and you can do the very same with your home automation kit, those thermostats and stuff like that I showed you. And basically, you set up these rules. So you say, look, I'm using Google Mail. If a mail comes in from this person, then do that. So it's logic-based. Or if I've got a calendar event, turn the lights down so no one can see me. If someone's at the door for Halloween, definitely turn the lights off so you can't see me. You can set up these rules, these automations, and Zapier integrates with Office 365, with Gmail, with all the kind of things you do to reprioritize your work. I think it's a great tool. I encourage you to go and play with it, basically, to see what you can do to get rid of the distractions. Because when you're remote working, when you're home working, distractions can be a big thing. And it might be they are external distractions. They might be distractions that you wouldn't normally get in the workplace. They might just be the larder, the fridge freezer. Doing these automations will save you time. I've also seen teams who communicate more regularly, and they do that in an attempt to be more productive. So here's an example of a team who basically at the end of the week they say what they've done, and they do it in an open way so that everyone can see. So things things are out in the open. I think working in the open I'm certainly an advocate of that. There are these show and tells, and just using a blog or having a group messenger group can help your team, I think, become more productive when it's working remotely. The other thing we get with things like Microsoft Teams and using apps is something called presence. So we know when someone's available and we know when they're not available. Now, in an office environment, you can see when someone's available, and you can probably see if they're busy or not, if they've kind of got their hand in their head and their head's down. So using presence can be a great way of saying, do not disturb. So I encourage you to think about ways you might be able to use these types of pieces of software. There are some companies, and I cite now a CEO from a company called Stripe, who are a payment processor, who actually encourage their employees to send all their kind of low priority email into a sort of collective junk folder. It sounds really bad, doesn't it? But it's a shared email folder for all of the kind of circulars and low priority stuff. And it just means that it can sort of be ignored, but it's always there should you need to go back to it. I just think the power of these collaboration suites, the power of open communications is something we really need to harness for a productive workforce. So think about that too, how you deal with emails and communications. What apps you use, if you automate things, if you actually have more of an open working environment where you all share what you're up to. Now, today, we're on a webinar, and this is great, and we've got a certain format where there are interludes for you to talk, and I don't want to do too much broadcast. I think that's wrong, but we could augment this this webinar with other things that we could do live as well. So to bring a bit of richness to our communication, I've got this example of a platform called Mural. This is basically a live sort of whiteboard where people can move stuff around, brainstorm things. We could all draw together. If you think about it, we could all annotate the screen. So I would say, try and bring alive your communications with some of these interactive things. Not that we've done today, but again, I think you can look at being quite creative with your communication technology, and not just thinking about straight Zoom or straight webinar. Now, I said also at the beginning of the session that one of the problems we have with working remotely is that we can't necessarily rely on our IT department to save us from catastrophes. The help desk might still be open, but we might well be using our own kit. And for a long time, there was this phenomenon, and there probably still is, called bring your own device, which was, your IT department no longer really existed. You can use whatever tech you want, and you can still be productive, and you've got a personal budget for buying your own equipment. Well, the good news is that there are remote pieces of software which allow others to sort of gain access or administer your technology from anywhere else. TeamViewer is the one that springs to mind, and I've put up a screenshot here, but also there's something called Chrome Remote Desktop if you're using a Chrome computer or Chrome browser. So you can almost get IT support from your peers if you trust them, and this technology almost helps you to function if you're not a technophile and you just need help. That there is a way through it. So think about how your workforce might benefit from remote desktop, remote help. Now, I said I was using one of these NAS boxes to save all my files on and to keep them secure. That's up in my loft. You could, of course, send your files to the cloud. What does that mean? It basically means you're sending all of your data off to be stored somewhere around the world, probably in lots of places around the world. And the beauty of this, if you've got a fast internet connection, is that you can be sure that there's always a backup in some mountain in America somewhere. That's the confidence you get. Here are some examples: Google Drive, OneDrive, Dropbox, WeSend. They're all sort of the same. What I will say about these storage places are, yes, absolutely, there's a backup, and probably if a nuclear bomb went off, you'd still have your data, which is great. They do rely on you having internet connectivity, so just bear in mind, cloud's great, but once the power goes off and once your internet's gone, you can't access these things. The ability to send data up into the cloud, your ability is dependent on your internet connection, and typically internet connections are asymmetric. In other words, we can download stuff faster than we can publish or broadcast stuff. So it could be that you get some slow response or some restrictions, but in terms of data security, I think these are pretty good options. Right, another interlude. We are hitting 11 o'clock. This is fab. Has anyone got any questions that have come in since that last little section? That's a shaking of head. Okay, I'll take that as a no. All good and well. We're on the home straight. So do not despair. Your Friday, your weekend is still on its way. I've got a couple of questions, and I was hoping that I could shut down the slides at this point and just ask you. And here they are, and I pose these to you. How can we support the people who are not native with technology? I've already slipped into acronyms. Some people will definitely struggle with even just connecting up their monitor and computer and keyboard. That's a step too far. The second question I pose is, should there be a home working standard? And this ties into the your statutory duties as employers, if you are employers on the line, where you've got to have these remote desktop assessments, you've got to have PAT testing ordinarily. Should we have a home working standard? Is that a useful thing? The third question is just how you feel about working from home. It doesn't suit everyone. I guess I must be a hermit because I quite like it. I certainly don't miss the commute, but I can happily work solo in absolute silence, and I'm really productive. I assume that other people will feel totally different. They will be, working from home, I feel alienated, isolated, stressed, and I am just not productive at all. So how do you feel? And the final question to you is, do you feel trusted? And the reason I put trust in there is because I'm intrigued to know whether people feel that their employers are confident that they can work from home, or they feel like they're slacking off, or do people feel like they have to work double time because the boss isn't looking over their shoulder? I think these are fundamental questions for me. So with that, I'm going to turn off my sharing, and I'm just going to hope someone talks to me. So here we are, back in the room. Has anyone got anything or any answers to those questions I posed? Any thoughts?
Helen sent me a message, but I think I need to discuss it with you direct. Actually, I'm reading it now, so don't know.
Okay. That's fine. Anybody else on the line? Given those questions I just posed, how do you feel about remote working? If you're remote working, come and talk to me. Anybody?
Hi, Sam here.
Hello, Sam. Thanks for picking up the gauntlet.
I've worked from home for the last 16 years now, so it was quite good. I was interested more on the productivity side, really, in terms of how to get more productive, and so there's some good tips there to look into. But it's quite nice to know that actually some of the things that you were saying, I've probably got a lot of that in place. So I'm self-employed, so I'm probably coming at it from a different angle. But yeah, I think there perhaps is some extra support that's needed for people who are new to working from home. I think because it's not, as you say, it's not right for everybody. I quite like it. I've converted my loft, so I do have a bed settee that I can go and have a lay down on if I need to. So
I'm quite jealous. And tell me, Sam, did you sort of get into a routine? Did it take you time to adjust?
I don't know really. Yeah, probably, because it's you do get distractions. So when you go downstairs, it's like the minute somebody sees you, they're like, want to tell you everything that, and you're just like, I'm working, I've just come down for a cup of tea. So, there are those boundaries, and I don't have like a headset that I can just press a button to say, with a thing on it to say, no, don't interrupt me. But yeah, I mean, it works both ways, and I think I've spoke to a lot of people that work from home now as a result of COVID, and like you said, they're more productive because they don't have the commute, they don't have the interruptions, other people in the office just talking, just chat about anything, which is still very useful. Don't get me wrong, I don't just always work from home, I do communicate with other people, so I think that is important. And we have put in these Zooms and Microsoft Teams with the companies that I work with. So
you made a very good point, and that's something you don't get in an office environment, which is the sort of chitter chatter. But also, you can, in an office environment, you can sometimes overhear things about other pieces of work So you can miss out sometimes on accidental conversations which can lead to some kind of benefit. And and this is where I suppose I was keen. I showed on the slide of having those informal moments where people can just chat like they might do in an office. But it sounds like you've got the knacker, and I think maybe a lock on your door might be the next piece of equipment you get.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I think I definitely need to look at the Zapier thing, if that's easy to get onto. Do you get onto it through your Office 365?
No, it's a separate solution. So you go into Zapier.com and you can sign up for free, and it basically you've got a set of apps that you might use. You see a set of apps and you can start building rules. So you might have to sign in using Zapier into your work email or whatever. But once you've kind of authenticated everything, you can start building these little rules and just go and play. It's like I said, it's free. It's free to a certain limit, and just see what you can do with it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Don't know if I've answered any of the questions. I can't remember what they are now.
Don't worry, Sam. I'm just pleased you've come forward and we've heard your voice.
I'm not going to open my video there because my office needs a bit of a tidy. I think one of your screens, I think.
Yeah, invaluable piece of non-digital equipment here. I see in the chat, Catherine, you said that remote working is very stressful. I don't know if you want to tell us more, Catherine, if you're willing to do so.
Yeah, I think working at home, like you just said, you have to set up all the technology things. It's like your introduction today. It's not that difficult, but you need somebody to tell you. If the employer can train us to do it, give us some help at the very beginning, that will make us less stressful. But if everything we have to kind of on our own, it's not easy.
It's not. You're right, and I think employers have been slow to recognize that their employees will have issues and to provide that support. And I only but hope that I don't hope the pandemic lasts for long, but I think if it does, then they will have to up their game in terms of providing all of the things that I mentioned, maybe in terms of equipping their employees, but taking the stress out, because crikey, for some people it's been an easy boat, hasn't it, this pandemic, a calm sail, and other people have been right at the other end where they've been worked off their feet. So I hope you find some rest at the weekend, Catherine.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I see there's also a question from Kevin. I've got the chat open now. This is great. Do you think that home-based businesses lose kudos or reputation by not having a physical office address? Great question. And I have seen, of course, businesses that fire up these virtual offices. So I don't think it's very easy to tell anymore whether a business is real. A lot of businesses striking up these sort of drop centers in London to have a London address. And you're right, I think they do it because there is some kudos in having a home address. A physical address. I suppose there's something quite grand, isn't there, as well, about having a building, the kind of status symbols. But then I think about that company I mentioned right at the beginning of this call, Automattic, who are really, they're almost as big as Google, and they don't have this physical office yet. They're still trusted. They still have a unit, believe it or not. They have like a drop letter destination. But they, I think there's a new sort of psychology, which is, wow, that's really fresh. Think about the carbon reduction. Think about the environmental benefits. Think about how radical that is. And actually, maybe there's kudos for actually being totally flexible and remote. I don't know. Good question. Really great question. Anybody else want to talk about their home working experience, or say whether they feel trusted? That might be a bit unfair, might it? No. Okay. Well, look, we've come to sort of 10 past
Sorry,
11.
Fraser, Helen's just messaged me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She said she hasn't found it easy changing to work from home and have been trying to implement more online digital systems. So she's found it reassuring and useful to learn about the automation systems and how these can benefit productivity. Not really a question, but
No, that's great. Thanks, Helen. I appreciate that. I mean, my hope today was you would just kind of take on board some of the equipment and some of the services that I've discovered, certainly. And I know all I can tell you is that, I feel like after 10, 12 years of remote working, it is totally possible and it's liberating. But it's not an easy journey. I think there's a bit of self-discipline, as well as all those great digital things to help you. There is a bit of self-discipline, and I think if you can crack it, it's one of the best ways to work. But it's not gonna be to everyone's flavour. And and personally, I think there is a transition period. It does get you do have to get used to being alone sometimes. Even that is kind of weird. So hopefully some of those ideas from the session has at least inspired you. And if you are an employer, I really hope you start thinking, as Catherine said, about your responsibilities, your duties, and how you can get the most out of your remote workforce. Maybe even taking up some of Brian's technology there, to measure stress levels. That would be magic. So if no one else has got any questions, I think I guess we're going to have to wrap up a little early. But that's probably to your delight and to my delight to some extent, because I can crack on with some more work. But
excuse me,
yes,
Frida.
yeah.
Before you go, I've just got a question. The session today, your presentation is very, very helpful and very practical. We can just put what we have learned today into use. But regarding the topic you covered today, are there, can we find relevant information online? It's I think we need to dive deeper.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I suppose there are a number of things. Firstly, I think we can share these slides. So if you do want to go back, and we move quite quickly through them, if you do want to go back and look at the equipment that I've mentioned and do your own research on Google, you can go and look at those things and see how much they cost and, work out whether they're for you and so on. So I think that's all right, isn't it, Lynn?
Yes, yeah. I'm just messaging as well. I'm just about to launch a poll for everyone to just give their feedback on the webinar as well. So if you could just take a moment before you leave to complete that for me, please.
Oh, sorry, I jumped in there, didn't I?
Yeah, no worries. And then if you wouldn't mind just sharing that last slide for me about Digital Catalyst, please.
Of course. So I'm going to pull that up now. And everyone can see the extra offer that we've got for you. I mean, the great thing about this program is, of course, if you want to know more, if we should expand into any other of these issues, then I guess it's got the flexibility of doing that. And you've got, potentially one-to-one support through this program. So, there's a great opportunity. If there was something in particular that you needed help with, someone can provide that individualized support for you. I've also got to recommend a website called commutemenot.com, which provides a lot of products and services for remote home workers. So even if you do, Catherine, a little Google search, you're going to find a lot of help out there on the net, as well as through this program. And if you really want to, sorry, yeah.
I beg your pardon. You just mentioned the website communicator.com.
Sorry, commute, as in the way you get to work. Commute me not. It's sort of a play on words, which is don't send me on my commute in the morning. Commute me not.com.
Commuter me not.com.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think it's in the slides there as well. If you
I saw it.
I've just shared it in the messages in the chat function as well.
Brilliant. Good. Okay.